with is TenCare, and not knocking TenCare, but they don't understand the difference between a private service and a 911 service. And you guys are in the same boat. I staffed 2 trucks, 2 24-hour trucks. That's what we have in Clay County. And we got a call one day, Tennessee Carriers wanted to authorize us to pick up a patient at her residence and transport her to Cookville to view an assisted living apartment and then transport her back to her residence. So, and then this same patient, I can pick her up at her residence, transport her to a doctor's office in Cookville, and they pay me $181 round trip for that transport. My base rate's $350. And our mileage, we bill $15 a mile. So they're not even paying our mileage for these transports. Clay County. So, it's, TCare is an across the board issue. I mean, the hospitals see it, we see it. So, and yeah, the providers see it. It's a whole, it's as a whole. But that's just one of many that we get faced with. And like I said, those patients, those TenCare patients, our base rate is $350 for a BLS non-emergency transport and $15 a mile. And they're reimbursing us less than $200 for a round trip transport. It's costed me that much to make that ride. So that's about the wildest TenCare story that I've got. I mean, we've got more, but that's probably the most absurd one that we've had recently.
Well, it's at the taxpayer's expense.
It is. It's at the taxpayer's expense because not only you're not getting reimbursed what you should be for these roads, but you're tying up an ambulance that is a primary 911 truck. In case if your other truck goes out and then somebody's having a heart attack and you're tied up on this non-emergency transport, but you're not even getting your mileage reimbursed for it. So that's one of the things that the Directors Association is trying to make them understand, the difference between a private service who, that's all they do, is non-emergency transports. That's all they do, and transfers.
What private service is this?
Any private service. This is any private service that you go with. The private services, they do non-emergency doctor's appointments, hospital discharges. They will do some emergency transfers out of some facilities, but they are basically a scheduled run service. They do not run 911 calls.
I might have missed it, but you work for Clay County?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is your position?
Director.
Are y'all set up sort of like what we were saying, as far as hospital, y'all transport?
We do have a local hospital. Cookville Regional is normally our closest appropriate facility for the same things that you guys were just discussing, cardiac, ortho, those type of things. Cookville Regional is typically our closest appropriate facility for those type of things. And we make, we may make 4 transfers to Cookville in a 24-hour shift, and we may only make 1, but we typically make at least 3 to 5 transfers to Cookville Regional a week.
Well, the town of Salina is what the county seat.
Yes.
And so what's the distance between just use Salina and Cookville?
38 miles.
30 miles.
It is 38 miles from our hospital to Cookville Regional.
Y'all rule?
Yes.
Y'all this is your.
Well, that doesn't mean we're getting reimbursed.
Right.
We're not getting reimbursed that. That's just what our mileage rate, and that's what it was set at when I came into the director's office. The theory in past years has always been if we fill it at a higher rate, once that increases, we're being able to collect that higher rate. Stay ahead of what Medicare is reimbursing.
Is she, have you been through the privatization?
Yes.
Can you explain that to us a little bit?
Yes. So let me start by saying, our service is currently, we are contracted out. We are contracted by the city of Salina right now. Clay County doesn't run the ambulance service, they contracted out. The city of Salina has had it since 2007. Prior to that, 2006, 2007, we were contracted by the private service. And I'm not here to argue for or against private services, just my personal experience. I've been employed by that ambulance service, at least on a part-time basis, since 1998. That was the closest I've ever come to leaving. We had 70% of our full-time employees within that 1 year that were gone. By the time that year was up, for either their own leaving or they were terminated for some reason. There was 2, I think, that were terminated. The rest of them left. They chose to leave. It was the private service that we were contracted by. They had several stations down this way, Lebanon, Nashville, Knoxville, and right off the bat they came in, they were paying all their other employees $3 to $5 more an hour than what they were paying us. And then about 6 months into the contract, they came back and decided, okay, if you don't make a run between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m., we're only paying you for 21 hours. Now, you're gonna be here for 24 hours because that's your job, and you're required to be here, but if you don't make a run during those hours, we're not paying you. And then a couple months after that, they came back and said, you know, and anybody who works in EMS will tell you that what money you make and you get from your overtime. They came back, they cut that out, they did away with you have short check, long check in EMS, and they did away with your long check. You had consecutive 48-hour checks instead of that 1 week there that you had a 72-hour check. So they did away with that. You know, there was tension between EMS and 911, EMS and the hospital. It was a very bad situation, personally. And, you know, like I said, I'm not here to argue for or against a private service. I guess if I could say anything to you guys regarding that, just from being, and I was not in a director's position, I was simply an employee. One of the problems that we had was when all of our normal employees were leaving, and I'm talking employees that had been there 10 years plus, that left. Experienced employees who were familiar with the county. They were bringing employees in to staff those positions that were having to use a GPS to even find Salina, Tennessee, and putting them on a 24-hour 911 truck, and they didn't even know where the local hospital was, much less some back road on the far end of the county.
Why did your county decide to privatize in the first place?
Our county, prior to my time in EMS,
Before you go there though, I thought you said the city ran it.
the city does now. The city runs it now.
So the county was running it, and then they moved to the city?
Before my time in EMS, the county ran it. It had already been contracted out by the time I started working there.
So the county went through?
They went through one contractor, Carthage General, Southern Regional, they contracted it out. They actually had 3 services. They had DeKalb County for a while, and then they actually got out of the ambulance service business, and that was where this private service came in. After 1 year of that, Clay County said, no, we gotta do something different. We can't, you know, we're not renewing this contract. And so the city of Salina stepped up and said, hey, you know, we'll try it, see how it goes, and it's, the city's had it since 2007.
Do you know what their subsidy is, or how much money they?
County gives a $30,000 a month supplement, so it's $360,000 a year.
300, So the 330 comes from the city of Salina?
No, Clay County supplements the city 30,000 a month.
30,000 a month, okay,
Yeah.
30,000 a month,
Yes,
300. Okay.
360.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Do you see any difference in the patient care?
Absolutely. You know, when you have local people who live there, they're going to take better care of those patients. You know, you're, for lack of a better term, your frequent flyers that you deal with, you know, and I'm not talking those for the headache or the stubbed toe. Those folks who are genuinely have medical issues, you haul them, you transport them, you develop a relationship with them. You know when something's not right with them, you know their history, and they're gonna get that better care, you know. That would be just like me coming down here and getting on one of the Dex ambulances. I'm not gonna know the first thing about where I'm at, where I'm going, and that little 80-year-old grandma that has COPD, and she's just not acting right, you know, worse than normal. Now, I'm not gonna know that to go that extra step with her. As you do people who are local.
So why, after that year, if I understood, it was privatized for a
Yes.
year, why did they stop that contract? Why did they say they were not gonna renew it?
Because we had lost all of our local employees.
Okay?
We had, you know, there was just, the employees that were left there were miserable. There was only 3 of us original employees that made it through that year.
What was the community's response to that?
The community response was, who is this? You know, I've never seen this person. It took, you know, what should have took 10 minutes for that ambulance to get here took 25 minutes for it to get here because they didn't know where they were going. Or, you know, well, my son had to ride with them and tell them how to get to the hospital, or my husband had to drive in front of them and show them how to get to the hospital.
I just got to stop for a second. What was the reason that the county or city went over to a private company in the first place? Do you know?
Initially, like I said, that they've been contracting out ever since I began working in EMS. The county had actually stopped running it while I was still in high school. The county stopped running it from just the stories that I've been told was because financial reasons. You had, you know, back at that time, billing was still being done in-house, and you had that, you know, Mayor, you know, it's Christmas time. You hauled my wife the other day, I can't afford to pay this bill, and it got written off, you know.
So they weren't doing a good job
No,
financially?
they weren't, no, ma'am, they were not. So, at that point, you know, they just financially, they weren't able, I've got a gentleman who
Just
still
to
works
see
for
it,
me.
basically.
Yeah, no, they were not.
Okay.
It's been there 45
So they
years.
just basically had no choice but to.
They did. I think that, well, they didn't, no, they did not have a choice. At that point, Carthage General Hospital was getting into the ambulance service contracting business. They took that contract, that worked very well.
And you're working for a private company right now?
No, ma'am, I work for the city of Salina.
It's the city?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, Natalie, can I make a comment about Carthage?
Yes,
Okay, whenever Clay County took over with Carthage Hospital, also took over DeKalb County, also took over Charleston County. And the reasoning behind that is because they could file Medicare aid, what the hospital files, and they was getting 100% reimbursement. So they stayed in the ambulance business for about 2 to 3 years till that run out. Medicare got smart, took that away from them, then they gradually started dumping the services. And I think Clay County was the first one to go.
yes,
And well, I think DeKalb was the last,
yeah.
because I worked there.
Yeah, and like I said, that was, I can't speak to a whole lot of that. That was prior to when all that all took place initially, that was prior to my time in EMS.
Okay.
So, what's the population in Clay County?
Just under 8,000.
8,000. Does the city of Salina subsidize any, or is it managed by the Clay County Board? Is any money coming from the city?
Yes.
How much is that?
Well, my budget is $754,000. The county supplements $360,000 of that. That pretty much covers my payroll. You know, then what isn't brought in by billing is subsidized by the city, that is absorbed by the city.
So the city and they have some type of interlocal agreement, I guess, between the city and the county?
Yes.
So obviously, y'all city works good with y'all.
Absolutely. I mean, I have been through Carthage General, I went through the private service and this, and, you know, this is absolutely the best relationship that we've ever had. If there's an issue that we need to sit down, you know, I can get a hold of both mayors and say, look, you know, here's what's going on. It's local. You know, even though it may be contracted, we all still consider it's ran locally. So, you know, I can't argue 100% against contract. It works well for us. What did not work well for us was being contracted by a private service, ambulance service. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but,
What's the population in the city?
I think just under 2,500.
And I've got a question too, since you're a director, it would be something I'm curious about, because in my research, basically, I saw where that the counties can actually like have, contract like for not just the, you know, like have regular runs and then contract with a private company. So, basically, is there a reason, like a lot of the Medicare runs or whatever, can you contract with a private company for just the Medicare runs and things, or?
That I
Is
couldn't
that
speak to.
possible?
I honestly couldn't speak to that.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, ma'am, I cannot answer that.
Okay.
Breaking up the functionality of the service, it sounds like is what I hear her saying. There's certain things that you can do that the, say,
Non-emergency,
non-emergency care or something, I think is what.
like non-emergency, and then maybe not Medicare, maybe that would be the right thing.
I think where a lot of that came from, and again, this was prior to my time as a director, but I think several years ago, the Upper Cumberland Directors Association came in and they went through, did a resolution, every county took it back to their county commission, and each county commission passed a resolution making you a closed county EMS wise. Because honestly, even though it's what little we're getting, most of your smaller counties like this one and like mine, we rely on those non-emergency discharges or those doctor's appointments. We rely on those to help bring in revenue. So if you have a private service coming in here and taking them, you know, that's not even $200 that you're being able to bring in, so. They did that, and I think the way that resolution reads was that any private service that is in your county has to be able to provide the exact same service that your county 911 service is providing. But, you know, it goes back to, at least that is a little bit of revenue that you're able to bring in by us being able to take those runs as we can.
Can I ask a question? You said you had 8,000 people, is that
Just
correct?
under, yes.
And your county gives 360,000?
Yes.
How much was your city giving?
They are whatever, they're footing the bill for whatever is not brought in.
What's your total budget?
754,000.
754,000, so minus 360, and that's what the city
Yeah,
pays.
that's what the city,
And how many transports do you do annually?
I think last year was just over 1,300.
And how many do you do annually?
We've passed over 2,000 was our last, it was 2,050.
So
As of last night when I got off shift.
our budget is how much per year?
$550,000.
And we've got double the almost double the population.
Our budget is not that, our budget is $1,052,000.
Okay, but from the
From the
county.
taxpayer.
From the taxpayer as well.
Our subsidy.
Yeah, and your subsidy is 360. And we've got almost double, and we're giving like an extra $140,000. Okay.
Any more questions?
How many times did you, as a private service, was any 911 calls not able to be taken?
I don't remember specifically in our county a time when we didn't make it, when we weren't able to take that call. I know that happens. It didn't, we were fortunate enough that it did not happen to us, within that year. But I do know that it does happen. I've got some of my employees have some family in East Tennessee where their primary service is contracted out with a private service, and they get that a lot.
Two questions. How big is your county as square miles, and how much of your population is elderly, above 60?
The majority of our population is above 60, and well, we're just under 300 square miles.
But to get back to your question, Corey, and I'm not disputing numbers, if you're saying that the Clay County gave you 360, and the city, and your total budget is 754, you're not taking account any kind of roughly half of your money coming in from insurance and collection.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know how you go in the city.
We would have to go in
You'd have to
and
go in and
break in and see exactly what we're bringing in and where we're.
Yeah, but we're about 50% is what I'm trying to say. If you look at the rough numbers, we're about $1 million plus, and we subsidize about $500,000 plus.
So am I not understanding, 8,000 people cover 760,000 people, or 760? Is that correct?
According to that, then $754,000 is the total budget, then you're not getting any money from insurance. There's no revenue. Correct.
Yeah, the city is, simply because of that supplement, the city is actually able to make a profit each year. It's not a huge profit, but they are actually able to make a profit, but without that supplement from the county.
So what your organization, the city doesn't have to do is go to educational debt service and borrow roughly money to
No,
operate on.
No.
Just borrow
Yeah, and
any
usually those first couple of years when they took it, yes, they did.
Right.
Now, they stuck with it long enough, they made that back, and they are able, honestly, they're able to make a small profit.
Correct.
But without that supplement from the county, that would not be possible.
But again, am I misunderstanding, 8,000 people cover $760,000?
That is my budget.
Okay. And that
We
comes
have
from
a
8,000
population of
taxpayers?
just shy of 8,000 people,
Okay.
How many trucks do y'all run?
2 24-hour trucks.
2 trucks. How many employees?
I have 12 full-time.
Is anybody at the table familiar with AMR,
Yes.
private service? They run 911 out of Springfield. They do run 911 calls. That is a private agency that runs 911 calls.
Well, that's what I was saying, because right here it is, it was like, you can break it out and break it down, you know, because it says, county EMS providing emergency 911 transportation with a third-party ambulance provider for non-emergency, and that's where I got, okay, that's what I was curious about. If y'all do that.
You know how they do their contracts?
Oh, nope.
You don't? The contract is 2, 3, 4 years, 5 years, I'll tell you. What's gonna happen here, in 3 years, they're gonna come back to us, hopefully us, and they're gonna say, hey, we'd like to have some more money.
Well, at that point, we can also talk about the city.
Right.
And the city might be able, in 3 years, you might have a better deal.
Well,
So
the way,
that's how it works.
the way AMR will make money is they'll come back, they'll wanna renegotiate. And if we don't accept their negotiation, they're gonna walk right out of that service. You're gonna have an empty building sitting there, you're gonna have used equipment that ain't worth anything but hauling out to Ivy Bluff, and then we are gonna be trying to figure out how to provide the service for this community.
AMR is one of the largest private ambulance services in the country, but they are also one of the highest sued.
And they will flat tell you,
First
they will
off,
flat
let
tell
me
you that's
clarify
how
my
they make their
point.
money.
Let me clarify my point.
They don't make it through running, they
The
don't make it,
statement that was made,
they do not make money.
the statement that
by
was made
running
that
calls.
private service
They
does
make
not
their
run
money
911
by-
calls is incorrect.
by-
That's all I was doing was
The way they
correcting the
make their
statement.
money is,
That's what I was saying.
the way they make their money is when they renew their contracts.
It's a business, and there is profit. If they don't make profit, they will be gone.
That's right.
They will break a contract, and
I think Natalie probably meant in the upper
I
company.
meant, yes, and, you know,
That's what she meant.
their primary, I guess I worded that wrong. Their primary priority is non-emergency. They're not out here, that, you know, the only reason, they're getting contracts to try to run county 911 services, but their money-making thing is non-emergency. That is the majority of their business.
Who are you talking about now?
Any private service.
Private service is
You
just
know,
that.
just
It's a
private
business.
sector, it is.
It's a business.
We have a lot of, the ones I've talked to, private services, there's medics on that truck that has not started IVs in 20 years. I mean, we cannot allow for the medics to come on there and we have someone in needing some kind of medication, there may be hypovolemic or anything, needing fluid or anything, and they can't even start an IV because they've not started one in 20 years. That's not a risk I would like to see for the county.
Everything's done in the pre-hospital setting.
And when you examine the idea of privatization through EMS, you can go on and read article after article, not anecdotal stuff. You can read articles, how things are presented, and you can see it succeed. And where you see it succeed is when there's a full-time firefighter system in the community who are EMT trained. When those firefighters respond to any call and they're EMT trained, guess what? They know how to take care of that patient at the scene, and then they wait on the ambulance to come. Or they have some setup in their system and they transport them some way with an EMT firefighter trained together. It succeeds. You see that. But when you read about places that privatize that don't have that type setup, you read of disaster. You read of situations where the company comes in, such as whatever company you want to label it. Company A comes in and says, I will have 2 ambulances available in your community. They will always keep an ambulance available in the community, but while they're going to need to make some money, and they're going to send that second ambulance to a dialysis call, a doctor's office call, or they're going to go to the next county and run something to make some money.
Which is where most of us going to go.
Okay, so they're going to keep one. Well, I can tell you, we've already had a discussion, Chad provided numbers. We do a tremendous amount of calls running folks from our hospital to Rutherford. That one ambulance we're going to have, and it's going to take somebody over there. Somebody's going to have an MI or a coronary event on the backside of Short Mountain, and one ambulance is going to be in Smith County running a dialysis call, and the other one's going towards Murfreesboro with the patient already loaded. My question is, who responds to that gentleman that's having a coronary event? It's not going to be your EMTs in this county, or excuse me, not going to be your first responders, because that system's no longer going to be present, because they fall under the care of Canyon County Emergency Medical Services. There's not going to be any first responders to go help. They may want to, but they're not going to have any medical direction to respond. They'll want to go help their community, and they'll want to go help their people of this community. They don't have any medical direction and no oversight, so they can't respond to help. Same thing along the way, if you want to ask about the rescue squad, they're not going to be able to respond either, because they also fall on the side of Canyon County Emergency Medical Services under a doctor's license that happens to be mine right now. They're not going to be able to respond either. So you're going to have folks that will go to these places, and there's going to be somebody's mama is going to be on the backside of Short Mountain needing some help, and ain't nobody there to help. That's going to be a mama of somebody that somebody in this community cares about.
How do we respond now when the same circumstance occur?
Let me finish what I got here, and I'll answer that question, because all this can be there. I'll just answer it. We have folks in our community, on our ambulance service, that care and love enough that they'll come off their table setting and eat dinner with their families. They'll come from another setting and they'll get in an ambulance and respond because they love the community. I think Charles brought up something. You can look at the cab, you can look at Smith. I've heard about Clay. They've had this, guess what, their county's back to running. Had a huge price tag when they reinstated it. Or the city, excuse me. Somebody back in their community is now running because it was a disaster.
We've had 2, 3 third crew calls, one today, one yesterday.
Explain that, Dave, because I believe there's a misunderstanding about 2 ambulances, 2 crews. All we need.
We staff 2 crews, 24 hours a day. For instance, today, if anybody was coming through town, there was an auto accident that had 3 patients. One ambulance was already tied up on a call from a nursing home that ended up transporting to Murfreesboro. It took 2 ambulances to take care of this wreck over here, because beside Rite Aid. I was there at the office, so I obviously got on the ambulance and responded. Just so happened there was an off-duty EMT that was there also. He responded with me. Yesterday evening, both ambulances were tied up on calls. We had a wreck call that came in up here on Gasaway Highway. I responded to it. One truck was headed out to one call, one truck was coming back from Murfreesboro where they had just transported to. So I ended up responding by myself to this call up here to start until that second ambulance coming back from Murfreesboro to get there. So yes, we have third crew capabilities.
Dr. Thomas, are private services not required to have a medical director?
Certainly they are.
Okay, so they would work off of his license, would that be?
The paramedics locally will work off his.
What about the first responders and the rescue squad? No. Probably not. No.
And what about the DOA?
I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, I do not believe that medical director out of Nashville, I think our guys will know that when they need to talk to a medical director, they've got somebody they can talk to. And I don't believe that private services have direct interaction, is what my understanding is. And I had no idea if their medical director would allow for local folks to serve under him or not.
So Lewis County runs this semi-private and it's under the hospital. They would be working under the hospital, because I know they're only subsidized $144,000 a year by the county. Would they be working under somebody at the hospital's license then? That ambulance service is run by the hospital.
They're working underneath the hospital's direction.
Brenda, can I ask a question, please? Does everybody understand what a first responder is when they're talking about it in this situation? I know normally first responders is a general term for firefighters, police, but in this situation, they're talking about, and I didn't know until you said that private companies don't use first responders. That makes sense because he's under county direction, but they're volunteers in the community. I think right now they have to be in the fire department too, I'm not really sure. Yeah. But they're a step below EMT. They have to have 60 hours of training. What they're used for, like we live in Short Mountain. The ambulance service is in Woodbury. And as you know, we've got Auburn Town, Gasaway, Woodland, and Short Mountain. When an ambulance is called, they call the ambulance, then they call home. They'll call and ask for a first responder in that area, and he goes and takes care of the patient while you're waiting for the ambulance to come 15 to 20 miles to get there. He can get there within 2 minutes. And I can't tell you how many people have called me and told me and he's not the only one, of course, but how much that meant, because those few minutes can save a life. And that's something to consider.
But that goes away with the private company.
Also goes
I can't tell you that 100%. I cannot say 100%, but more than likely, I can't imagine a guy out of Nashville just saying, "Oh yeah, use my license to take care of your county."
Well, I'll trust you because you're actually a doctor and you actually have the knowledge that the armchair quarterbacks don't. So thank you for your time.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, Dr. Thomas is also the medical examiner of Camden County. Each paramedic that works at the ambulance service is also a deputy coroner. You lose that privilege. And I don't know, that would be up to the county as far as what you're gonna do with your DOAs, where you're gonna transport them, who's gonna do it.
Do we have a coroner right now?
We have a medical center.
Sorry.
He took the place of the coroner,
Yeah.
is what he did.
Used to be Dr. Ruby.
They had to step it up from coroner to medical examiner a few years ago. But y'all were talking about this private company, AMR. I did a Google search on private ambulance service. AMR went before the DeKalb County, Georgia, Atlanta is the town, this week, yesterday, their last meeting of their legislative calendar for the county this year, and said, we need more money. And they had, yesterday, voted in, wanted to extension for 6 months, they had no choice. Because if they did not vote an extension to their contract, they would have been sitting with empty ambulance or empty buildings. And they had been forced to pay DeKalb County, Georgia, $600,000 in fines and penalties for not living up to their contract or parts thereof contract. And also had to sign an agreement with the town north of Georgia because of extended time to get to that part of the county. I think Sherwood was the name of it, to guarantee they'd get there under 9 minutes. Now, they was fixing to walk out and leave that county with no ambulance service. And another article I read was up in New York City, a private company. Somebody picked up one of the mics in their buses and radioed in to the dispatch service that all ambulances were out of service. They filed bankruptcy.
I also like to continue a little bit to tell you, when they do bail them in 2 to 3 years, which seems to be the current trend, if you read article after article, the reestablishment of ambulance services locally, I don't even have a clue, but it's up above millions.
Well, my role is the chief financial officer, so I'm just gonna make sure you got this statement. When I look at the cash flow sheet of ambulance service, receiving 22 cents of the subsidy, and I do the math, and I predict, in order to comply with comptroller's guidance, you're gonna need at least a 3-cent property tax increase to meet their demands. That's the numbers. It's right now predicted to be $167,000 at the end of the year. It needs to be upward of $250,000. I have 25% in the general fund to start off at the beginning of the year. So we're not in the budget process yet, but that's thought you just kind of need to know that. And that's based on average numbers of 25 cents, or correction, $25,000 per penny, which is actually technically $24,500. So that's where we need to go, and just let you know that that's get you ambulance service running where it needs to be. That's what you need to do.
I mean, can we not have the opportunity to
Yes,
giggle there?
Yeah, absolutely.
What Mr. Reed was saying,
Yeah.
isn't that kind of what was done to y'all with the convenience center? You had a contractor say, if you don't give me this or don't do this, I'm not gonna do what needs to be done, and that's why it was kind of sitting there for a minute until y'all got it figured out.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get into the convenience center, but yes, that's exactly what happened.
What I'm saying is the cautionary tale is what Mr. Reed was saying, is that could be a possible thing that the county could be looking at again in about 3 more years, but with a ambulance service instead of that.
Correct.
Well, with all these things, it sounds crazy, but when your contract's up, that's not like, is that today? That's like, you know that 3 years from now. You know, I mean, it's not like, you don't know, like suddenly today's the day, oh, wait, the contract's up. You didn't think about that? No, everybody does.
There's more to the story, well, you know, there's more to the story, it's your problem, last day. But anyway, all that.
There's more to the stories on both sides, Ron.
That's exactly right.
That's
And-
right.
And I would just say.
It's like eating breakfast at somebody's restaurant and wanting to drink coffee.
We've had a presentation from, and appreciate that, man, that you come and share your experiences that you have. So I would assume that the board would want to bring in a county or 2 counties that have had experience with privatization, and they can tell their stories well, so you get a balanced approach from both sides. To see what information we may not be aware of, or do we confirm or deny, so that you've got, we as commissioners, who have to control the purse strings, to make the informed financial decisions for being financially responsible to the property owners of this county. We need all factual information we can have at our disposal in order to make the best decision for this county, particularly when a county is broke. And that's just a fact. We can talk all day long about whatever you want to talk about. This has to be run as a business, and the revenue has to be there to support it. and to continually think that somehow, some way, that revenue doesn't come into play to make this thing float, doesn't fit. That's just a fact. So to be as informed as we possibly can, we need as much information to be laid on the table for the commissioners to make the best financial decision possible for the taxpayers of this county. Not for Rodney Mahaffey, not for anybody individually, but for the taxpayers. They're the ones footing the bill. So it has to work. The services and finances have to come together and work on both sides. There's not a one-side entity here to go forward. Because, and that's what Brent is trying to identify when he made the statement he did, and that is, the road we're going on right now doesn't work financially. That's just a fact. You can sit here and disagree, we can argue all day long, but that's a fact. Mr. Reed has sat at the commission table now, goodness, I don't know, 16, 20 years. And he will tell you the direction it stands on right now is going in the wrong direction.
It'll only be 12 at the end of this.
So, things have to change. Just ask you. More money, less services, combination of it, just has to change. Just a fact.
I'd like to clarify a point. I rode this horse a couple of years ago in the budget committee when I brought up, what those that were on the budget committee can verify. I brought up that we look at a private service to see what they do, what they don't do, in order to pull the ambulance center's numbers back in line, to get better control of what was going on. A simple look at the budget, still today, says that our costs are too high. That was the only reason. I am not an advocate for a private service, but obviously there are good private services out there that do things well, and collections is one of them. And that's what I wanted to look at as a member of the budget committee a couple of years ago. That's still what I think, and Ronnie just verified that you need to bring in from both sides to hear how it can be run well or can be done more beneficial, but still on a county operated basis. Our service can be fine-tuned.
You can't make the best decision without having all the information. That's just a fact. And this doesn't apply to ambulance service. It applies to all of our operations. You cannot make the best decisions for this county financially without having all the information on the table. If you're not looking at all the information, then how in the world are you making the best decision?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
What
not the
does
chairman. Everybody asks.
What
me.
solid waste?
This brand?
Oh, yeah, you Mr. Bush. What does solid waste projected to cost the county in pennies? 21 cents?
No, 16 cents is the actual amount that was allocated for, right now. I can walk you through the solid waste budget. I don't think.
No, I'm just curious. So we're gonna cost 25 cents. The sheriff's department's gonna cost what?
22.
22 cents.
22 for the ambulance service.
22 cents, and the sheriff's department costs 90 cents? Is that close?
No, yeah, the sheriff's department's probably closer to $1 when you include the jail.
What's the difference between us and them?
That's up to this table here to decide.
I'm asking you a question.
Well, first of all, by law, you're not required, if you want to get down to it. The sheriff and the jail is required by law.
I agree. I agree with what you said.
I'm not saying you're not essential, I'm just saying you're not required by law.
I think the 2,000 people we haul a year, we think they're.
But to get back to Mr. Luna's question, whenever I inherited the solid waste budget, we were spending $71,000 in the month of July. We spent $59,000 in the month of August. In the month of September, we spent $37,000. In the month of October and November, we spent $14,000. Now again, just for the fact that we were forced to make a decision because the contractor walked off the job, we had to react. That's all I'm saying now.
Well, what would we have to get it down to be in the good graces of everybody?
I'm just saying, I'm just projecting that every budget is supposed to have a 25% buffer in order for us to not do a trans note from educational debt service. I'm just projecting, and I manage this, is that we're not getting there. And I've asked Dave to look at all expenses, look at everything we can to try to get that balance up. That's all I've said. And the direction we're heading, We're gonna have to add revenue to it, and the only way the legislative body can add revenue is to have the profit done. That's all I'm saying, just for information.
Here is my question to you all. I've gone ahead and I've looked at other counties as well. I've been looking at audit reports, and I've looked at, we got 95 counties in the state of Tennessee. And so I've looked at other counties that are similar in size to us. And I don't look at counties who are doing it worse. I'm trying to look at counties who are doing it better. My benchmark is trying to go higher, trying to go better, right? We want excellence here. So I am looking at counties that have been doing it with zero subsidy. And how is it that they're doing it with zero subsidy? That's my question. That's what I do. I call up and I say, how are you guys doing this?
And what's their answer?
I would love it if you would call them up and ask them. Some of them are utilizing their hospitals. Some of them are utilizing private services that none of you have ever even mentioned here tonight. I would love it if you would call them. Call Perry County, ask them, how are they doing it on a zero subsidy? How is it that Wayne County is doing it on a zero subsidy? What about Sasquatchie? They're doing it on 150K. They're about the same size that we are. They're farther back in the six. They are about the same land size that we are. They're not a wealthy
You know how many
county.
runs I do a year?
I have all that written down at home. I didn't bring it with me today.
What was the name?
Sequatchie County. That's what she was
How
saying.
does Lincoln and Wayne, how do they do it? They're doing it with their hospitals.
You say Lincoln because they're a hospital-based service, that's why they're a non-subsidy.
Lincoln,
So you cannot-
Wayne, they do
you
it
cannot do
both,
that,
they do it
look,
both
that's-
with their hospitals at 140K. So maybe is there something that we can do to be working with our hospitals? I don't know. But I'm looking at it, and the big question that you asked tonight, Mr. Noakes, and you're shaking your head, ma'am, I don't appreciate it.
I'm scratching my head. Is that
Okay.
a problem?
Well, you kind of give it a little bit of that. I'm trying to think outside the box. Our county is in fiscal
It's
trouble.
It is
and
our
so I'm-
county, and I live here as well.
I know, but I'm telling you, as a commissioner, we are in a big amount of trouble. So I'm trying to think outside the box and try to help.
Weren't we all trying to think outside the box?
I don't know, ma'am, I don't know you. But anyway, yes, this is what I'm telling you. I am hoping that we can learn from these other counties, that we can ask them the questions, that we can maybe incorporate them into our ambulance
But
service.
you're going to have to
That
do
we can-
apples to apples, and those are not apples and apples, apples
Listen,
and
if you
oranges.
go ahead and I can even call Williamson County.
We're a hospital-based service too, so
Yeah.
how's that gonna make
So
any
it's not apples
If
to
you go
apples.
ahead and they got 10 stations, and they're doing, okay, listen to my form of logic here. 10 stations, and they got 1.8 million. How much are they subsidizing? It ends up being 180,000 subsidy for each substation a year. I'm just looking at that, and the numbers to me are saying, I would love to see us get down to $150,000 subsidy.
Emily,
I'll throw in
I have a
another
question.
100,000 to do 250.
how many times have y'all called
Hang on,
Lincoln
Greg.
County
Hang on.
Transport?
Hang on.
And they won't do it?
Hang on,
Or
Greta.
you St. Thomas Road?
Just
Hang on, Greta.
let me just try to ask you how I'm thinking. When I look at this, I see other counties doing this. And maybe the big question needs to be asked is, why can't we do that?
I would have to call them, contact them and see what exactly they are doing.
That's right, and that's all I'm asking.
Okay.
That is all
And I'm
I'm
all about
asking.
that. The one thing I can say is this, as a committee, we need to agree to that. And I'm not technically on the committee, but instead of one or two going this direction, one or two going this direction, we need to come together. If you want me to contact, I will gladly contact those counties. I will gladly, talk to, try to get the directors' names, because none of those are in our district, which doesn't matter. I will gladly see if they will not share with me their budgets, see how they do it, and we can go from there. Canyon County is in a unique position because we are fortunate enough to have a hospital, just like with Salina. We have another 3 counties in the Upper Cumberland that don't have hospitals, and I have already spoken with them. And each county almost tends to have its uniqueness about how each thing is done. But I will be glad to contact these 3.
Ms. Floyd, on the bid that you're on the panel, can you tell me why you didn't bring the numbers to the committee in order, if you've done the research, in order that you can provide the numbers for the committee?
I didn't know what the agenda was tonight, I didn't know what we'd be doing tonight, to tell you the truth.
I didn't know either, I was
Well, there wasn't,
like-
I mean, this
Well,
was,
But look, the guy was here, this lady was here, evidently there was agenda and we didn't know. I didn't know. And no offense or anything. I mean, I'm glad to hear from, I appreciate this but it was just kinda like, I didn't know what to prepare for either.
Well, you didn't have a chairman.
right,
Or tonight, you didn't have a chairman.
we've done all that tonight. And so, there will be an agenda for the next meeting.
But that was my deal, like I didn't know exactly what we were gonna talk about.
Okay,
So are we just gonna try to agree that our current guys are gonna try to figure out better ways to do this, or what?
Well, he has been. He has been.
That's what you
And we'll continue doing it.
Guys,
It sounds like if we can just do some really good, I even read up on Nashville, and they were having some really, Davidson County, huge issues, and they just really came down on going after it for their billing and for their creditors, and they went after it, and they were able to really change it around. So, maybe that is all we have to do, is just really, come on and really come after that whole area, and that'll just change how things look for us in our future.
okay,
I mean, that would be fabulous.
That is in their audit, by the way, because I read the same thing, because they talked about how more aggressive that they had went after their billing, and that had gotten their numbers up.
Yeah.
Are we talking about Nashville
In
Fire?
the audit.
It was in the audit report where I think it was
Davidson County.
Nashville Fire, is that what we're talking about, NFD?
Davidson County, county audit, just like what we